안녕하세요 여러분! I feel like I haven't filmed weekly Korean videos in so long. I missed learning with you guys. To get inspiration about what to talk about today, I looked back at my previous weekly Korean videos to gain inspiration of what to actually talk about today. And I noticed that a couple of times I mentioned Korean family tree relations and things like that, but I never ever talked about them. I've been avoiding them like wildfire because, boy, I don't even want to get into it because it is so complicated. Those words aren't prevalent in our lives because we don't really use them that often, but I was interested to dig deeper and find out some new things that I didn't really know before. And with that, I wanted to share with you guys how to talk about and call your, let's say, immediate slash the most closest extended family that you have in Korean. So let's do this. I even brought my little handy chalkboard with me today to help us with this. I don't know if it will, but let's see. All right, so let's start kind of from the bottom of the genealogical tree, is that what it's called? Like a family tree? And figure out how you call your siblings. Let's say you're a girl and you have an older brother, an older sister, a younger brother, and a younger sister. You're a big family of 5. The way you would refer to your older brother would be oppa. 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 The way you would refer to your older sister would be 언니. 언니. When it comes to younger siblings, it is very simple. Regardless whether you're a boy or a girl, you just refer to them 남동생 and 여동생. 남동생, 여동생. Just to give you a bit of phonetical information, if you notice these nam and 여, think about how you say man and woman. 남자, 여자. 남, 여. Those are very common syllables that you would see referring to either a man or a woman. 남 and 여. So these are just kind of like little contextual clues when you see a word that you may not necessarily know, but you know that a certain syllable stands for a certain thing. For example, nam usually refers to something manly or referring to a man, and 여 has something to do with woman and femininity, then you might guess the meaning of that word. You might not, but it always helps to know those little things. But what if you're a boy and you have an older sister and an older brother? The way you refer to them is 형 for an older brother and 누나 for an older sister. 형, 누나. And like I said earlier, when you have younger siblings, even if you're a boy, you just refer to them as 남동생, 여동생. Simple. Now moving on to your parents while I erase my little board. Korean is a language where honorifics and politeness is very important. So there are 2 ways you can refer to your parents. A more polite way would be 아버지, 어머니. 아버지 is your father. 어머니 is your mother. You would use these words when you are referring to your parents when you're talking to other people, for example. But at the same time, you can actually talk to your parents using these more formal terms depending on your relationship with them. Most of the time, parents and children have a more relaxed relationship, so you can call them 아빠 and 엄마. 아빠 is dad and 엄마 is mom. Now that we know how to say mother and father, mom and dad in Korean, how do we say parents in Korean? Because that's also a very used word. 부모. In Korean, 부모 means parents. But most of the times, once again, we need to be a little bit more respectful, a little bit more polite, and add an honorific suffix, which is 님, and it turns into 부모님. 부모님 are your parents. Interestingly, the word 부모님 is actually made up of the way to call a male relative and a female relative combined. The syllable 부 is usually referred when you're talking about some kind of male relative. And 모, we will see that later on, is usually mentioned when we're talking about female relatives. For example, let's now look at your paternal and maternal sides of the family, the aunts and uncles. This is where the use of 부 and 모 is gonna come very apparent. So when it comes to your paternal and maternal side of your family, there's actually a way to say that in Korean. So your father's side of the family would be called 친가, like this, 친가. And your mother's side of the family would be called 외가, like this, 외가. Interestingly, we have the ka part here and here, like 가족. I don't know if that has any kind of meaning or whatnot, but that helps me remember when I know the word 가족, which is family, just like this big umbrella. And then I see this 친가 and 외가, father's side of the family, mother's side of the family. It just kind of makes me interested where this ka comes from, and to me it's like 가족, family, paternal side, maternal side. I don't know. These little things that I notice help me memorize these words. So if that helps you, there you go. I've pointed it out for you. And if it doesn't, just forget it. Don't mind my little blabbering. The important part that you should focus on is actually 친 and 왜, because they're gonna come in later on when we're referring to different aunts and uncles on different sides of the family. So because Korea is a pretty patriarchal society, let's start with the father side. Your father's sister would be called 고모. 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 And do you see? Do you notice this little 모 right here? Where does it come from? The 부모님. Remember, parents? 모 is actually the particle that refers to female relatives. So aunt, there we have our 모. Keep a close eye on other words because you will notice these patterns. So 고모 is your father's sister. Guess how her husband would be called based on the whole 부모님 correlation. You guessed it right. It would be 고모 부. Your dad's sister's husband would be 고모부. Isn't it fascinating? The patterns are everywhere. When it comes to your father's brothers, most of the time you would call them 삼촌. 삼촌. I say most of the time is because if your father's brother is not married, this is how you'd call him, 삼촌. But if your father's brother is, let's say, older and he is married, you would call him 큰 아버지. 큰 아버지. 큰 아버지. 큰 in Korean means big. So 큰 아버지, big dad. And if your father's younger brother is married, you would call him, yep, 작은 아버지. 작은 is small, and all we gotta do is just replace the big with the small, and there we go. We have your father's younger brother who is married. 작은 아버지. I'm pretty sure the same thing applies to their wives. So your father's older brother's wife would be 큰 어머니, and your father's younger brother's wife would be 작은 어머니. But correct me on that one. Native speakers and Korean tutors and teachers, please correct me if I'm wrong. This is an educated guess based on some sort of research. Right, now let's look at how to say grandparents on your paternal side. So the parents of your dad. In general, the way you would say grandparents in Korean would be 저부모님. This is kind of the grand part of the 부모님. 부모님 is parents, you add 저 to it, and you have grandparents. When it comes to kind of general speech and Korean everyday language, grandparents would be 할머니 and 할아버지. Oh my god, writing on air is really hard. 할머니 and 할아버지. I'm sorry if my writing is illegible. It's really hard to not have a desk. 할머니, 할아버지 would be the way to refer to your grandparents on either side. But when it comes to your paternal side, and if you are talking to your relatives or just friends or even strangers, if you want to specify that you're talking about your paternal side grandparents, you would add 친. You'd have 친 할아버지 and 친 친할머니, 친할아버지, 친할머니. Do not use these terms when you're actually directly speaking to your grandparents. This is very wrong and impolite, and just like do not say that. But when you're talking about them to someone else, you can specify and say that they are your paternal grandparents. 친할머니, 친할아버지. And the 친 part comes from 친가, your paternal side of the family. When it comes to your maternal side of the family, all we do is we add 왜 from 왜가. So what we end up having is 왜 할머니 or 왜 할아버지. 왜 할머니, 왜 할아버지. Similarly, when your mother has a brother who's your uncle, you would naturally call him 삼촌, but you can specify it saying 외삼촌. So your maternal uncle, 외삼촌. 외삼촌. If your mother has a sister, she would be your aunt, your maternal aunt, and that would be 이모. 이모 in Korean. And once again, we're seeing the little mo. Yay! I love patterns. Alright, so that's when it comes to your maternal side of the family. Hopefully I mentioned everyone. Okay, I didn't mention nieces and cousins and nephews. From what I've heard, in Korean, niece and nephew can be the same word, and that would be 조카. 조카. That would be a niece and a nephew. I've heard somewhere that you can specify like a female niece and a male niece, but I honestly don't even know how to say it. So if any of you Korean speakers or teachers or tutors know it, the comment section is right there for you. Please, please shine your knowledge upon us Korean learners. Please, would really appreciate it. Lastly, your cousins would generally be called 사촌. Kind of like 삼촌, but without the mium. 사촌. Yes, I know there are a lot of ways you specify, like if it's your older male cousin, you can say 사촌형. It gets pretty complicated. I feel like us foreigners, if we're not getting married into a Korean family or we don't have some distant Korean relatives, we wouldn't necessarily need to know these little nuances. So I just wanted to give you guys a general overview. There are loads of rules, loads of ways to establish kinship and your relationships, which I'm not gonna go into. I personally don't even know it because I think it's way too complicated, and it's very, very central to Korean culture, and I feel like someone who hasn't even been to Korea, I don't even have the right to talk about it because I just never even seen it or experienced it. So wait until I go there, wait until I figure it all out, and I will share all the Korean family tree secrets with you guys. Alright, so that was it for today. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. I'm really curious if you found this useful or not, if this is something you already knew or not. So yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy. I'll see you all next week. Bye, 안녕.